The stars had always watched over Earth. For thousands of years, humans looked up at the night sky and wondered if they were alone. By the year 2347, they had their answer. They were not alone, and something was coming. Admiral Daniel Porter stood at the observation window of Sentinel Prime, Earth's most powerful orbital defense station. He was a tall man in his late 50s, with gray hair and calm eyes that had seen many battles. But he had never seen anything like the readings on his screen. 2,000 ships, Lieutenant Ryan Cole said from his console. The young officer's voice was steady, but Porter could see the tension in his shoulders. They just appeared at the edge of the solar system, sir. They're big. Really big. Porter nodded slowly. He had prepared for this day his entire career. Every admiral before him had prepared for it too. Humanity had known for over a century that alien life existed. They had intercepted communications, studied crashed probes, and learned everything they could about the galaxy beyond their small corner of space. What they learned was terrifying. The Vexari Empire ruled over 400 star systems. They had conquered dozens of species. They showed no mercy to those who resisted. And now, they had found Earth. "Get me Dr. Morgan," Porter said. Minutes later, the face of Dr. Katie Morgan appeared on his screen. She was in her 40s, with short brown hair and intelligent eyes hidden behind simple glasses. She ran the Terran Advanced Research Institute, the secret facility where humanity's most powerful weapons were designed. "I see them," she said before Porter could speak. "The quantum singularity cannons are fully charged. All systems are ready." Porter allowed himself a small smile. "Good. Let's hope we don't need them." But they both knew they would. Far away, at the edge of the solar system, the Vexari fleet moved forward like a wave of death. Fleet Commander Tharvox stood on the bridge of his massive flagship, looking at the small blue dot in the distance. Earth. Such a tiny world. Such easy prey. "Commander," one of his officers said, "we are receiving data about the target species. They call themselves humans." Tharvox made a sound of amusement. His species looked somewhat like tall, gray-skinned insects, with 4 arms and black eyes that showed no emotion. He had conquered 17 worlds in his career. This would be his 18th. "Tell me about these humans," he said. The officer pulled up the information. "They are a young species, Commander. They have only been sending signals into space for about 400 of their years. Our analysis shows they spend most of their time fighting each other. Wars over land, resources, beliefs. They are violent and primitive." "Primitive," Tharvox repeated. "And their military capability? Nothing significant, Commander. We detect no fleet, no orbital defenses. They appear to have basic spacecraft for traveling within their system, but nothing that could threaten us." Tharvox felt satisfaction spread through his body. Another easy conquest. The Emperor would be pleased. "Broadcast the standard message," he ordered. "Offer them the choice. Surrender or die." The message traveled across space at the speed of light. It reached Earth within hours. Every government on the planet received it. Every military commander. Every citizen with a receiver. "People of Earth," the message began. "You are now subjects of the Vexari Empire. You will surrender your world, your resources, and your labor to serve the Empire. Resistance is not permitted. If you surrender peacefully, some of you will be allowed to live as servants. If you resist, your entire species will be destroyed. You have 48 hours to respond. This is your only warning." In cities around the world, people panicked. They ran through the streets. They cried. They prayed. They had always feared this day might come. But in the command centers of the United Terran Defense Council, there was no panic. There was only quiet preparation. Admiral Porter read the message 3 times. Then, he looked at his officers. "Do not respond," he said. Lieutenant Cole blinked. "Sir, should we not at least try to negotiate?" "There is nothing to negotiate," Porter replied. "The Vexari do not make deals. They do not show mercy. They have destroyed entire species for refusing to bow. We knew this day would come. We have been preparing for 200 years. He turned to face his crew. And now, we are ready. Deep beneath the surface of the moon, massive doors began to open. On Mars, hidden facilities powered up systems that had waited decades to be used. In orbit around Earth, cloaked stations ran final checks on weapons that the galaxy had never seen. Dr. Morgan watched the activation sequence from her laboratory. Her team had spent their entire lives building these weapons. Weapons based on physics that other species thought was impossible. Weapons that could tear holes in reality itself. All systems green, she reported to Admiral Porter. Quantum singularity cannons ready. Reality fracture warheads armed. Directed energy arrays online. We are at full combat capability. Porter received the report and felt a weight settle on his shoulders. He had hoped this day would never come. He had hoped humanity could reveal itself to the galaxy peacefully when the time was right. But the Vexari had made that impossible. How long until they reach weapons range? He asked. At their current speed, approximately 72 hours, Cole answered. 3 days. 3 days until the battle that would determine humanity's future. On the Vexari flagship, Commander Tharvox waited for Earth's response. Hours passed. Then a full day. The humans said nothing. They are afraid, his second officer said. Too scared to even respond. They know they cannot win. Dumb, Tharvox agreed. He had seen this before. Primitive species often froze when faced with the might of the Empire. They could not process what was happening. They could not accept their fate. Increase speed, he ordered. Let us end this quickly. I want to be home before the Emperor's celebration. The fleet accelerated toward Earth. 2,000 warships, each one capable of destroying a city in seconds. The largest invasion force the Vexari had sent anywhere in 50 years. It was overkill, really. But Tharvox believed in being thorough. Back on Sentinel Prime, Admiral Porter watched the enemy fleet grow closer. His face showed nothing. Soon, he whispered to himself. Very soon. In her laboratory, Dr. Morgan made one final check of her most powerful creation. The quantum singularity cannon could create a miniature black hole inside any target. The black hole would exist for only a fraction of a second. But that was enough. Nothing could survive, being crushed by infinite gravity, even for an instant. She had built 12 of these cannons. She hoped it would be enough. Lieutenant Cole looked at the tactical display, watching the red dots of enemy ships move steadily closer. He was young. He had never seen real combat. But he had trained for this moment his entire life. They all had. Earth was silent. Earth was waiting. And in 72 hours, the galaxy would learn why humanity should never be underestimated. The Vexari fleet passed Neptune on the second day. Commander Tharvox stood on his bridge, watching the blue ice giant shrink behind them. The humans still had not responded to his demands. He found their silence amusing. Run another scan of the inner system, he ordered. I want to know everything about their defenses. His scanning officer worked at his console for several minutes. Then, he turned back, with a confused expression. Commander, I am detecting very little. Some small stations around their moon. A few ships near the red planet they call Mars. Nothing else. Nothing else? Tharvox repeated. No orbital weapons, no defensive platforms, no fleet. The officer shook his head. Either they are extremely primitive, or they are hiding their forces very well. Tharvox made a dismissive gesture with one of his forearms. They are primitive. Our intelligence confirms this. They barely left their own planet a few centuries ago. They do not have the technology to hide from our sensors. But deep in his mind, a small voice whispered a warning. In his long career, he had learned to trust that voice. Still, the evidence was clear. The humans had nothing that could threaten his fleet. Meanwhile, aboard the stealth cruiser Nightfall, Captain Scott Hayes watched the alien fleet pass within 1,000 kilometers of his ship. They did not see him. They could not see him. The nightfall was wrapped in a cloaking field that bent light and sensor waves around the hull like water flowing around a stone. 2,347 vessels confirmed, Hayes said into his communicator. Transmitting positions to command. Admiral Porter received the data on Sentinel Prime. He studied the enemy formation carefully. The Vexari were confident, arrogant. They had arranged their ships in a standard conquest formation, with their biggest vessels at the center and smaller escorts around the edges. It was a formation designed to intimidate, not to fight. They have no idea, Lieutenant Cole said quietly. No. On Earth, Ambassador Nicole West prepared to deliver humanity's response. She was a woman in her 60s, with silver hair and a calm voice that had negotiated treaties with every nation on the planet. Now she would speak for all of humanity. She sat in front of a camera in the United Terran Defense Council headquarters. Behind her, the flags of every Earth nation hung in a row. She took a deep breath and began recording. This message is for the commander of the Vexari fleet. I am Ambassador Nicole West, speaking on behalf of the people of Earth. We have received your demands. We reject them completely. She paused to let the words sink in. Humanity will not surrender. We will not serve. We will not bow to any empire, no matter how powerful it believes itself to be. You have 24 hours to leave our solar system. If you do not leave, we will remove you ourselves. There will be no second warning. There will be no negotiation. This is our only response. The message was transmitted toward the Vexari fleet. It would reach them in a few hours. Commander Tharvox was eating his evening meal when the message arrived. He watched it with growing amusement, then showed it to his officers. They all laughed together. Remove us, his second officer said. With what? Rocks and sticks? They are brave, Tharvox admitted. Stupid, but brave. I almost admire them. He finished his meal and stood up. Increase our speed. I want to reach their planet as soon as possible. Let us show them what happens to species that refuse the Empire. The fleet accelerated again. They would reach Earth in less than 2 days now. Back on Earth, Dr. Katie Morgan briefed the Defense Council on what would happen when the weapons were activated. She stood at the front of a room filled with generals, admirals, and government leaders. A holographic display showed the approaching enemy fleet. Each quantum singularity cannon can fire once every 30 seconds, she explained. The projectile travels at 90% of light speed. When it hits a target, it creates a miniature black hole with a lifespan of 0.3 seconds. During that time, the black hole will crush everything within a radius of approximately 500 meters. Several council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The reality fracture warheads are more destructive, Morgan continued. They do not create black holes. Instead, they tear a hole in space-time itself. Anything caught in the tear is simply erased from existence. We have 200 of these warheads. I recommend we use them on their largest vessels. President Laura Chen leaned forward. What about their shields? Their armor? Morgan allowed herself a small smile. Their shields operate on principles we surpassed 200 years ago. Our weapons will pass through them as if they did not exist. Their armor is equally useless. They have nothing that can stop what we have built. The room was silent for a long moment. Admiral Porter spoke next. I recommend we let them cross Mars orbit before we engage. Let them think they have won. Let them feel safe. Then, we reveal our true strength. The Council voted unanimously to approve the plan. Across Earth, people watched the skies with fear. Most civilians did not know about the hidden weapons. They did not know about the cloaked stations or the quantum cannons. They only knew that an alien fleet was coming to destroy them. Some people fled to the countryside. Others gathered in churches and temples to pray. Parents held their children close and wondered if they would survive the week. But in the military command centers, there was no fear. There was only patience. Captain Hayes continued to shadow the Vexari fleet, sending constant updates to command. He counted their ships. He analyzed their weapons. He identified their command vessels. Their flagship is the big one in the center, he reported. Designation: Emperor's Wrath. Length approximately 12 kilometers. Heaviest armor and shields in the fleet. That is where their commander will be. Admiral Porter marked the ship on his tactical display. That one dies last. I want him to see what happens to his fleet before we end him. The 24 hours passed. The Vexari did not leave. On Sentinel Prime, Lieutenant Cole watched the countdown timer reach 0. He looked at Admiral Porter. The deadline has passed, sir. Porter nodded slowly. Then we have nothing more to say. He pressed a button on his console. All stations, this is Admiral Porter. The enemy has ignored our warning. Prepare for combat. We will engage when they reach the designated zone. Across the solar system, weapon systems came fully online. Crews took their positions, targeting computers locked onto enemy vessels. Everything was ready. The Vexari fleet crossed Mars orbit 8 hours later. Commander Tharvox looked at the red planet below and felt triumph. They were almost there. Earth hung in the distance, blue and vulnerable. Begin charging weapons, he ordered. We will bombard their major cities first. Break their will to resist. His weapons officers began the charging sequence. In a few more hours, they would be in range. Tharvox allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. Another conquest. Another victory for the Empire. His name would be remembered forever. He did not know that his name would indeed be remembered, but not for victory. His name would become a warning, whispered across the galaxy for centuries to come, a warning about what happened to those who dared to threaten Earth. The trap was set. The prey had walked into it willingly, and now, humanity was ready to show the universe why they should have been afraid. The Vexari fleet entered weapons range of Earth on a quiet Tuesday morning. Across the planet, billions of people held their breath. Commander Tharvox stood proudly on his bridge, looking at the blue planet that would soon belong to the Empire. It was beautiful, he had to admit. Blue oceans, green continents, white clouds swirling in complex patterns. A shame that so much of it would burn. All weapons charged and ready, Commander, his weapons officer reported. We can begin bombardment on your order. Tharvox nodded. Target their largest cities first. I want them to understand that resistance means death. The weapons officer began selecting targets. New York, London, Tokyo, Beijing, Moscow. One by one, the targeting systems locked onto the population centers of Earth. Then, everything changed. Commander, the scanning officer shouted, his voice filled with sudden terror. I am detecting massive energy signatures. They are appearing everywhere. Tharvox spun around. What? Where? The answer came from outside the viewport. All around the fleet, space itself seemed to shimmer and twist. Then, one by one, massive structures faded into view. Defense platforms, weapons, stations, ships, hundreds of them, appearing out of nowhere, surrounding the Vexari fleet on all sides. Impossible, Tharvox whispered. That is impossible, but it was happening. The humans had been hiding their forces, not behind planets or moons, but in some kind of cloaking field that his sensors could not penetrate. And now, they were revealing themselves. On Sentinel Prime, Admiral Porter watched his displays light up with friendly signatures. 500 defense platforms, 200 warships, 12 orbital fortresses, all of them armed with weapons that could tear reality apart. Signal the fleet, he said calmly. All weapons to ready status. Lieutenant Cole's hands moved across his console. All stations reporting ready, sir. Porter opened a communication channel to the Vexari flagship. Commander Tharvox's face appeared on the screen. The alien looked confused, frightened. "You were warned," Porter said simply. On the surface of Earth, General Amy Richardson stood in the command center of the Planetary Defense Network. She was a tough woman in her 50s, with short gray hair and the posture of someone who had spent 30 years in the military. Before her, hundreds of screens showed the status of ground-based weapons systems. "Planetary shields online," a technician reported. "Full coverage confirmed." Richardson nodded. "Activate." A massive generator buried deep beneath the Rocky Mountains hummed to life. Energy flowed through underground cables that stretched across continents and under oceans. And then, a shimmering barrier appeared around Earth. The shield extended outward, covering the moon and the orbital stations. Nothing could pass through it. Nothing could harm what it protected. Commander Tharvox saw the shield appear and felt real fear for the first time in decades. His sensors could not even measure its strength. It was beyond anything in the Empire's technology. "Open fire!" he screamed. "Destroy them before they can attack." The Vexari fleet unleashed everything it had. Plasma bolts, missiles, energy beams. Thousands of weapons fired at once, turning space into a storm of destruction. The attacks hit the planetary shield. They splashed against it like water against stone. They did nothing. "No effect, Commander," the weapons officer reported, his voice shaking. "Our weapons cannot penetrate their shields." In her laboratory, Dr. Katie Morgan watched the attack with scientific interest. The Vexari weapons were powerful, she admitted. Against any other species, they would have been devastating. But against human technology, they were useless. "Interesting," she murmured, making notes on her tablet. "Their plasma weapons are less effective than predicted. We overestimated them." Dr. Nathan Blake stood beside her. He was younger, in his 30s, with messy dark hair and nervous energy. He had helped design the reality fracture warheads. This would be the first time they were used in combat. "Should we begin?" he asked. Morgan looked at her screens. The Vexari were still firing, desperately trying to break through shields that would never break. She almost felt sorry for them. Almost. "Yes," she said. "Begin the sequence." On Defense Platform Delta 7, Ensign Megan Torres sat at her weapons console. She was only 23 years old. She had graduated from the academy just 2 years ago. She had never fired a weapon at a living target. Her console beeped. A message appeared on her screen. Torres looked at the targeting display. Her quantum singularity cannon was aimed at a Vexari cruiser, approximately 500 kilometers away. Inside that ship, there were probably thousands of alien soldiers. Living beings. Thinking beings. But those beings had come to enslave her people, to destroy her world, to kill everyone she loved. Her hands were steady as she pressed the firing button. The quantum singularity cannon released a pulse of compressed energy. It crossed the distance to the Vexari cruiser in less than a second. It passed through the alien shields as if they did not exist. It struck the center of the ship. For a fraction of a second, a point of absolute blackness appeared inside the cruiser. Gravity beyond measurement. Density beyond imagination. The black hole pulled everything toward itself. Metal. Air. Bodies. In 0.3 seconds, the entire cruiser was crushed into a space smaller than an atom. Then the black hole vanished. Where a massive warship had been, there was nothing. Not debris. Not wreckage. Just empty space. Commander Tharvox watched one of his cruisers simply disappear. He could not understand what he had seen. Ships did not just vanish. It was impossible. Then another ship disappeared. And another. And another. Across the human defense network, weapons began firing. Quantum singularity cannons erased ships from existence. Directed energy beams sliced through hulls, like knives through paper. And the reality fracture warheads launched toward the largest Vexari vessels. Dr. Blake watched his warheads fly toward their targets. "Impact in 5 seconds," he said. 4, 3, 2, 1. The warheads detonated, They did not explode in the traditional sense. Instead, they tore holes in the fabric of space-time itself. The tears were only a few hundred meters wide, but anything caught in them was simply gone. Not destroyed, not crushed, just erased from reality. 3 Vexari battleships vanished in the first wave. On the bridge of his flagship, Commander Tharvox screamed orders that no one could follow. His fleet was dying around him. Ships were vanishing faster than he could count them. Weapons that defied the laws of physics were tearing his forces apart. "Retreat!" he finally shouted. "All ships retreat! We must warn the Empire!" But it was already too late. Admiral Porter watched the Vexari fleet begin to break formation. Some ships tried to flee. Others continued firing uselessly at the planetary shields. None of them would escape. "Launch all interceptors," he ordered. "No one leaves." Across the defense network, hundreds of small, fast attack craft launched into space. They were piloted by the best pilots humanity had ever trained. Their mission was simple: ensure that not a single Vexari ship escaped to warn the Empire. The hunt had begun. General Richardson watched from Earth's surface as the battle unfolded. It was not really a battle, she realized. It was an execution. The Vexari had come to conquer. Instead, they had found their grave. She felt no joy, only grim satisfaction. Humanity had been preparing for this moment for 200 years. They had built weapons in secret. They had trained soldiers in silence. They had waited for the day when some arrogant empire would try to take their home. That day had come, and humanity was ready. Above Earth, the destruction continued. In the darkness of space, the most powerful military force the galaxy had ever seen was being erased from existence, and the galaxy did not even know it yet. The battle lasted exactly 7 minutes and 43 seconds. In that time, the Vexari Third Annexation Fleet ceased to exist. Commander Derek Saunders pushed his interceptor to maximum speed, chasing a fleeing Vexari destroyer. The alien ship was fast, but human engines were faster. He closed the distance in seconds. "Target locked," his weapons computer announced. Saunders pressed the trigger. A focused energy beam lanced out from his ship, cutting through the destroyer's engines. The alien vessel spun out of control, dead in space. "Destroyer disabled," he reported. Moving to next target. Around him, his squadron hunted the scattered remains of the Vexari fleet. Some enemy ships tried to fight. Their weapons could not penetrate human shields. Some tried to run. Human interceptors caught them within minutes. Some simply stopped, their crews too shocked to continue. None of them survived. On Sentinel Prime, Admiral Porter watched the tactical display with cold focus. Red dots representing enemy ships were disappearing one by one. In the first minute, humanity had destroyed 300 vessels. By the third minute, over 1,000 were gone. Now, fewer than 200 remained. "Focus fire on the remaining capital ships," he ordered. "I want their fleet completely eliminated." The quantum singularity cannons continued their work. Each shot was precise. Each target simply vanished. The Vexari had no defense against weapons that created black holes inside their ships. Their armor meant nothing. Their shields meant nothing. They were helpless. Dr. Katie Morgan monitored the weapons performance from her laboratory. Everything was working exactly as designed. The quantum cannons were maintaining their firing rate. The reality fracture warheads were achieving 100% target destruction. The directed energy weapons were cutting through alien hulls without resistance. "Make a note," she said to her assistant. "The singularity duration could be reduced to 0.2 seconds without losing effectiveness. We can improve efficiency for the next generation." Even in the middle of battle, she was already thinking about improvements. That was how humanity had survived. That was how they would continue to survive. Never satisfied. Always improving. Always preparing for the next threat. Commander Tharvox stood on the bridge of his flagship, surrounded by chaos. Alarms screamed. Officers shouted. Outside the viewport, his fleet was dying. "How many ships remain?" he demanded. His second officer checked the sensors with shaking hands. "Less than 100, Commander. We have lost over 2,000 vessels in less than 5 minutes." Tharvox could not believe it. The Third Annexation Fleet was the pride of the Empire. They had conquered civilizations. They had destroyed armadas. They had never been defeated. Now they were being slaughtered by a species they had dismissed as primitive. "We must warn the Empire," Tharvox said. "Send a message. Tell them what happened here. Tell them to never come to this system again." The communications officer tried to transmit. His console sparked and went dark. "They are jamming us, Commander." "I cannot send anything." Tharvox felt despair wash over him. The humans had planned everything. They had hidden their forces. They had let the fleet come close. They had sprung their trap. And now they were making sure no one escaped to tell the tale. It was perfect. It was terrifying. In the void of space, human interceptors continued their hunt. Commander Saunders had already destroyed 6 enemy ships. His squadron had eliminated over 50. They worked with mechanical efficiency, chasing down survivors and ending them one by one. "Commander," his wingman called, "I have a large group trying to run toward the outer system. 15 ships." Saunders checked his sensors. The fleeing ships were fast, but they would not be fast enough. "All squadrons, intercept that group," he ordered. "Do not let a single one escape." The interceptors converged on the fleeing Vexari. Within 2 minutes, all 15 ships were destroyed. Back on the Vexari flagship, Tharvox made a decision. If he was going to die, he would die fighting. He would take as many humans with him as possible. "All remaining ships, form up on my position," he ordered. "We attack their central station. We make them pay for every ship they have destroyed." The surviving Vexari vessels, barely 80 ships now, gathered around the flagship. They turned toward Sentinel Prime and charged forward, weapons firing. Admiral Porter watched them come. He felt a small amount of respect for the alien commander. The Vexari was defeated, but he refused to surrender. He would fight to the end. "Hold fire on the flagship," Porter ordered. "Let him come closer. I want him to see what we do to the rest of his fleet." The remaining Vexari ships flew toward Sentinel Prime. Human weapons focused on the escorts, picking them off one by one. Ships vanished in flashes of impossible blackness. Reality tore apart around them. Energy beams sliced them into pieces. By the time the flagship reached weapons range of Sentinel Prime, it was alone. Every other ship had been destroyed. Tharvox looked at his displays in horror. Nothing remained. 2,000 ships, the largest fleet the Empire had sent anywhere in 50 years. Completely annihilated. And not a single human vessel had been scratched. "Open a channel," Porter said. "I want to talk to him." The communication screen flickered. Tharvox's face appeared, showing an expression of defeat and disbelief. "What are you?" the alien commander whispered. "What kind of species are you?" "Well," Porter looked at him with cold eyes. "We are human. We are what happens when a species spends its entire history fighting for survival. We are what happens when every generation faces war and comes out stronger. We are what you should have been afraid of." Tharvox lowered his head. "You could have told us. You could have warned us about your true power." "We did warn you," Porter replied. The alien commander was silent for a long moment. Then he straightened up, regaining some of his dignity. "I request permission to send a final message to my homeworld. Not a military message, just a personal one. To my family." Porter considered the request. He could refuse. The alien had come to enslave his species. He deserved no mercy. But Porter was not cruel. He was a soldier, not a monster. "Granted," he said. "You have 1 minute." Tharvox bowed his head in gratitude. He turned to his communications officer, who managed to establish a narrow beam transmission that the humans allowed through. This message is for my children, Tharvox said. I will not be coming home. Our fleet has been destroyed. The humans are not what we thought. They are not prey. They are predators. The greatest predators the galaxy has ever seen. Do not come here. Do not ever come here. Remember me, and remember this warning. They are not. The transmission cut off as Admiral Porter gave the order. The final quantum singularity round struck the Vexari flagship. For a fraction of a second, a point of infinite density appeared at its heart. Then the massive vessel, 12 kilometers of armor and weapons and alien lives, was crushed into nothingness. The battle was over. Admiral Porter sat back in his chair and released a long breath. Around him, his crew was silent. They had just won the greatest military victory in human history. They had destroyed an invasion fleet without losing a single ship. They had proven that humanity was not to be threatened. But Porter felt no celebration, only exhaustion and a grim awareness of what was coming next. Begin cleanup operations, he said quietly. I want every piece of debris collected, every data recorder recovered. We need to learn everything we can about the Vexari before they send more ships. Lieutenant Cole looked at him. Do you think they will send more, sir? Porter nodded slowly. They will try. They always try. And when they do, we will be ready again. He looked out the viewport at the stars beyond. Somewhere out there, an empire was waiting to hear from a fleet that would never return. Soon, they would realize what had happened. Soon, they would know that Earth was not a planet to be conquered. It was a planet to be feared. 3 days after the battle, Earth was still trying to understand what had happened. The news spread slowly at first, then all at once. The aliens had come. The aliens had been destroyed. Humanity had won. People danced in the streets of every city. They hugged strangers. They cried with relief. For 3 terrible days, they had believed they were going to die. Now they were alive, and the enemy was gone. But in the halls of power, the celebration was more measured. President Laura Chen sat at the head of a long table in the United Terran Defense Council headquarters. Around her sat the most powerful people on Earth: military commanders, scientists, diplomats. They all knew that the battle was only the beginning. We have recovered significant amounts of Vexari technology, Dr. Katie Morgan reported. Our initial analysis confirms what we suspected. Their technology is approximately 200 years behind ours. Their weapons, their shields, their propulsion systems, all of it is inferior. General Amy Richardson leaned forward. How is that possible? They have conquered 400 star systems. They should be more advanced than us. 1. Morgan shrugged. They stopped innovating. When you conquer every species you meet, you have no reason to improve. They have been using the same basic technology for centuries. Meanwhile, we have been preparing for the day when someone would come to challenge us. Admiral Porter spoke next. The immediate threat is neutralized, but we must assume the Vexari Empire will respond. They will not accept the loss of their fleet, quietly. President Chen nodded. She was a woman in her 60s, with calm eyes and the steady presence of someone who had led through many crises. What do you recommend? Porter considered the question carefully. We have 2 options. We can remain hidden. Hope the Vexari believe their fleet was lost to some natural disaster. Or, we can reveal ourselves to the galaxy, make it clear that attacking Earth means destruction. If we hide, they will come again, General Richardson said. Eventually, they will figure out what happened. But if we reveal ourselves, we become a target. Ambassador Nicole West argued. Every aggressive species in the galaxy will see us as a threat. The room fell into debate. Some wanted to stay hidden. Others wanted to announce humanity's presence with overwhelming force. The argument went back and forth for hours. Finally, President Chen raised her hand for silence. We will not hide, she said firmly. Hiding is what prey does. We are not prey. We will send a message to the galaxy. We will make it clear that Earth is not a planet to be conquered. But we will also offer friendship to those who want peace. She turned to Ambassador West. Prepare a transmission. Make it strong, but leave room for diplomacy. We want to discourage enemies, not create them. West nodded and began drafting the message. On the other side of the galaxy, the Vexari Empire waited for news from their fleet. Emperor Zorath the Conqueror sat on his throne, surrounded by advisors and generals. He was old, even by Vexari standards, and he had ruled the empire for over 2 centuries. In that time, he had never lost a major battle. The fleet should have reported by now, one of his advisors said nervously. They were supposed to subjugate the humans and return for the celebration. Zorath said nothing. He had a feeling, a terrible feeling, that something had gone wrong. Then the communications officer entered the throne room, his face pale. "Your Majesty," he said, his voice shaking. "We have received a transmission. It is not from our fleet." Zorath gestured for him to play it. The screens lit up with an image of a human female. She looked small compared to the Vexari, but there was no fear in her eyes. Behind her, flags of different colors hung in a row. "This is Ambassador Nicole West, speaking on behalf of the United Terran Council and the people of Earth." Her voice was calm and firm. 72 hours ago, a fleet of over 2,000 Vexari warships entered our solar system with the intention of conquering our world and enslaving our species. That fleet no longer exists. Every ship was destroyed. There were no survivors. Murmurs spread through the throne room. Zorath raised a hand for silence. "We take no pleasure in destruction." The human continued. "We did not seek this conflict. Your ships came to our home, uninvited. They threatened our families. They planned to destroy our cities. We defended ourselves. That is all." Crom. Her expression hardened slightly. "But let this serve as a warning to the Vexari Empire and to any other species who might consider attacking Earth. We have no interest in conquest. We have no desire for empire, but we will defend our home with every weapon at our disposal. And as your fleet discovered, our weapons are beyond anything you have ever faced." "Anyway," she paused, letting the words sink in. "However, we are not monsters. We do not seek enemies. To any species that approaches us in peace, we offer friendship, trade, cultural exchange, the chance to build something better than empires built on conquest and fear. The choice is yours." The screen showed a final image. Earth from orbit, surrounded by the massive defense platforms and warships that had destroyed the Vexari fleet. "We are humanity. We are here. And we are not afraid." The transmission ended. Emperor Zorath sat in silence for a long moment. Around him, his advisors whispered fearfully. His generals looked confused and angry. "Your Majesty," one general said, "we must respond. We cannot let this insult stand. Send the entire armada. Destroy these humans." Zorath slowly turned to face the general. "You saw the transmission. You saw their weapons. Do you truly believe our armada would fare better than the Third Fleet?" The general hesitated. "Surely they cannot be that powerful. Perhaps the fleet was caught off guard. Perhaps 2,000 ships," Zorath interrupted. "Gone in minutes. No survivors, no distress calls, nothing." He shook his head slowly. "No. We will not attack Earth again. Not until we understand how they developed such weapons. Not until we can match them." He rose from his throne, suddenly looking very old. "Issue orders to all military commanders. No Vexari vessel is to approach the human system. Any species under our protection will be warned as well. Earth is to be avoided." For the first time in 3,000 years, the Vexari Empire retreated. Across the galaxy, Other species intercepted humanity's transmission. Some were terrified. The humans had defeated the Vexari effortlessly. What chance would anyone else have against them? But others celebrated. The Vexari had conquered their worlds, enslaved their people, destroyed their cultures. And now, someone had finally stood up to them. Someone had finally made them afraid. Within weeks, Earth received its first diplomatic communication from a non-Vexari species, a small civilization called the Keth, who had been conquered by the Empire centuries ago, reached out with a simple message. "We wish to be friends." Ambassador West smiled when she read it. This was what she had hoped for. Not war. Not conquest. Just the chance to reach out and connect with others who wanted peace. On Sentinel Prime, Admiral Porter stood at the observation window, looking at Earth below. The planet was peaceful now. The shields were lowered. The weapons were powered down. Life continued as it always had, but Porter knew that this was only the beginning. Humanity had announced itself to the galaxy. There would be challenges ahead. Other empires. Other threats. Species who would see Earth's power as something to fear or something to take. He was ready. He would spend the rest of his life making sure that humanity stayed ready. In her laboratory, Dr. Morgan was already working on the next generation of weapons. The quantum singularity cannons had performed well, but she saw room for improvement. The reality fracture warheads could be more efficient. There was always more to do. She smiled as she worked. Humanity had spent its entire history fighting. Against nature. Against each other. Against extinction. That history had made them hard. It had made them dangerous. And now, the galaxy knew it. President Chen gave a speech to the people of Earth that evening. She told them about the battle, about the victory, about the future that lay ahead. "We are not alone in the universe," she said. "We never were. But now, for the first time, we face that universe as equals, not as prey, not as slaves, as partners to those who want peace, and as the worst enemy imaginable to those who threaten our home." She looked into the camera with fierce pride. "We are humanity. We survived everything our own world could throw at us. We survived everything the universe has thrown at us. And we will keep surviving, keep growing, keep reaching for the stars. Because that is what we do. That is who we are." Around the planet, billions of people watched and cheered. Above them, the stars waited. And somewhere among those stars, the galaxy was learning a lesson it would never forget. Some species were meant to be left alone. Earth was one of them.